Welcome to Marwen. Doesn't start off that well for me at all. I can see that a lot of people would be impressed by what's going on. It's sort of a wartime scene with what's quite obviously dolls, plastic dolls, like Barbie-ish kind of size dolls, that sort of thing, not Lego toys. And I just wasn't convinced by it. I know that they were meant to be plastic toys, but they just look like digital plastic toys to me, and they do throughout the film, and that's the problem that I have with the film. I didn't like that that was the beginning of the film, and I could sort of accept this first 5 minutes as being a fantasy, but then the worst bit actually was when you go into the real world and the first few lines of dialogue, actual human dialogue, which as it happens come out of Steve Carell's mouth, are truly terrible. They're written so badly. There's a saying in movies that you should show don't tell, and there's 2 or 3 lines of exposition right at the beginning of the film, and it's just so obvious what it's doing. It's because they can't really find a way of showing it succinctly, so they tell you. And it's a guy talking to himself in his back garden, and he tells you. It's almost like he knows that the camera's there. But anyway, it does get better. I have to give a minimum amount of the story, but this is actually this would come up in a synopsis, so it's no surprise. Steve Carell plays a former illustrator who, at a point in his past, was beaten up very severely, and now is a slightly different person. And his pastime, his main pastime, is to take photos of models, dolls in his case, Second World War scenarios. So he sort of stages little vignettes of things and photographs them, and he's actually quite a famous photographer. But in his day-to-day life, he spends a lot of time at home. He lives in a very small town where he knows everyone. It's very much Steve Carell's film. He's in almost every frame, either his real character or his toy alter ego. And I'm just not convinced that his performance is good enough. I've seen him in other films being absolutely great, but I just didn't buy it in this one for some reason. Luckily, the supporting cast are great, and 2 of them in particular. And as human beings, they are critical to us as an audience not seeing Steve Carell's character as just a nutcase, as sort of embracing him into the society. And they are Isa Gonzalez. I think she's credited in this as Eliza Gonzalez, and Merritt Weaver, or Weather. I've never heard her name said, so I don't know how it's pronounced. Both of which I'd seen in other things before, but they've been kind of in the background. So I'd seen Merritt Weaver in Signs a long time ago. She's the girl that in the drugstore that tries to confess to what's his name, Mel Gibson. And I'd also seen her in at least 10 episodes, I think, of The Walking Dead, but I honestly didn't realise it was her. She just looked a little bit different. And then Isa Gonzalez, I'd seen her, I think, only in Baby Driver, in which she plays a very, very different character. But anyway, their characters in Welcome to Marwen are crucial to keeping everything real. Because there's other things that are problematic. There are some one-dimensional characters. Particularly, there's this someone that one of the main characters is someone that moves in across the road from Steve Carell, and her ex-boyfriend character is very one-dimensional. He's the kind of your mean ex-boyfriend. You could see him in a cliche dictionary, and I know what purpose he serves, but it just wasn't convincing at all. And because he pops up, he's not in it much, but he pops up at crucial times. It's quite problematic when he does, because it makes it sort of throws you from reality a bit. But the main problem, I think, is the way that the dolls are used. They're obviously digital. I mean, Robert Zemeckis loves digital. If you look at his career over the last 15 years, it's very, very digital based. And there was a point where he kind of tipped into that. So he was practical effects in the 80s and then 90s, and then I think it was the Polar Express, where he just decided, right, that's it, I'm all digital now. But it's never been very good. I've seen a number of his films where the digital effects have been rubbish. nowhere near as good as other films that were out at the same time using the same kind of techniques. And in this, so you've got dolls that are walking around with moving faces and some and they're sort of humanized but not fully. And I just didn't buy them. They always looked digital. I couldn't help but think throughout that it would have been more authentic, it would have been better looking, and it would have been better for the story had they used stop motion animation to move the dolls around and then maybe superimpose actors' faces doing motion control on top of the dolls, and they would have looked more like dolls. It would have felt more real within this plastic world, if you see what I mean. So overall, welcome to Marwen. Nothing wrong with it. Worth seeing. I wouldn't queue up to see it again, but if it's on, I'll probably watch it again. Some of it feels a little bit Oscar baity. It feels a little bit like they're going for a Best Actor Oscar for Steve Carell, which then they're just not going to get. It's not good enough. But it's okay. There are a lot worse films out there, but there's a lot better.